Let's talk about the Louvre in Paris. It's more than a museum, right? It's basically a fortress of art, home to some of the world's most priceless treasures. But what happens when that impenetrable fortress is breached? Today, we're diving deep into the audacious, the ingenious, and sometimes shocking stories of the heists of the Louvre.
But before we get into the thick of it, if you're the kind of person who loves untangling complex stories like this one, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It really is the best way to support what we do here.
Okay, so let's dive right in. The Louvre. We think of it as this grand museum, but it actually started its life as a medieval fortress, a building designed, literally, to keep people out. And that creates a fascinating paradox, and it's the central question for us today. How on earth do you steal from a fortress that's holding the world's most precious treasures?
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First up, we'll look at the whole idea of the unstealable masterpiece. Then, we're going to try to get inside the heads of the thieves themselves. After that, we'll walk through the step-by-step anatomy of a heist. Then we'll explore the constant cat-and-mouse game between criminals and security. And finally, we'll understand why this is so much more than a local crime. It's a global cultural crime.
All right, let's jump into part one, the unstealable masterpiece. This really gets to the heart of the paradox of the world's most famous museum. The Louvre isn't just a building with some nice paintings. Think about it. It's a global treasury. It holds pieces from ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Renaissance Italy. It's a physical record of human history. So a theft here isn't just about losing property, it's seen as a direct assault on our shared cultural memory.
But here's the thing. For a place considered so impenetrable, its history tells a very different story. The most famous breach, of course, was back in 1911 when the Mona Lisa itself just vanished. And it's not just ancient history. As recently as 1998, a landscape by Corot was literally cut from its frame and disappeared, a theft that, by the way, remains unsolved. These events prove a crucial point. The fortress has walls, but they are far from perfect.
And this brings us to the people who find those imperfections, the masterminds themselves. So let's try to get inside the thief's mind, because as we're about to see, it's not always about the money.
Okay, this is where it gets psychologically fascinating. While money is, of course, an obvious driver, it's often not the whole story. As you can see here, the motives can be incredibly diverse. We're talking everything from ideological belief to a deep emotional obsession, or even just for the pure thrill of it. Art theft is genuinely one of the most psychologically complex crimes there is.
And these different motives create two very different types of criminals. On one side, you have the professional. They're strategic, disciplined. To them, a masterpiece isn't really culture, it's currency. It's a bargaining chip in the criminal underworld. Then you have the obsessive thief. This person is impulsive, emotional. For them, the theft is a personal mission, driven by this intense psychological bond with the object.
And this is exactly why the impact of these thefts feels so personal to all of us. The cultural historian Lefebvre put it perfectly. Each object is a fragment of our collective memory. Losing it feels like losing a piece of history. It's not just paint on a canvas that's stolen. It's a piece of our shared story that gets ripped away.
So, we understand the motivation, but what about the method? How do you actually pull off an impossible crime? Let's break down the anatomy of a heist. Professional art thieves follow a blueprint, and it is a masterclass in patience and precision. It begins with weeks, sometimes months, of intelligence gathering, studying guard routines, camera angles, floor plans. Next, they identify the perfect window of opportunity, a moment of weakness. Then comes the execution, rapid, silent, and often lasting just a few minutes. And finally, a meticulously planned escape and dispersal, getting the art out of the country before the alarm even becomes public.
So the key point here is that thieves don't just break down the door. They are masters of exploiting the museum's built-in vulnerabilities. The Louvre's massive size and complex architecture, with all its hidden corridors, creates blind spots that are perfect for escape routes. They attack during predictable moments of human error, like guard shift changes. And they understand that if you rely too heavily on technology, one simple human mistake can create the perfect opening to bypass the entire system.
Of course, the museum doesn't just sit back and let this happen. This leads to a constant, high-stakes security arms race, where every single crime inspires a new defense.
And you can map this evolution directly to the heists themselves. After the Mona Lisa was simply lifted off the wall in 1911, protective glass became standard for major works. The 1998 Corot theft, where the painting was cut from its frame, exposed huge gaps in inventory and surveillance, which then led to advanced digital tracking systems. Each failure forces a new, more sophisticated defense.
Today, the Louvre's defense is a multi-layered system. It's not just about cameras. It's a hybrid of cutting-edge tech like AI and infrared sensors, highly trained human intelligence that can detect intent, not just action, and architectural design that subtly controls visitor flow to make any suspicious behavior stand out. One layer without the others creates a vulnerability.
But when a theft does happen, the impact goes far beyond the museum's walls. It becomes a global cultural crime. Because when a masterpiece vanishes, the loss is felt universally. The ripple effect is massive. A single stolen painting can fuel vast black market networks, where it's traded not for its beauty, but as untraceable currency for things like drugs or weapons. It can spark serious diplomatic tensions between nations and ignite these fierce, emotional debates about cultural ownership and who things really belong to. And that debate often crystallizes into this one powerful argument. When a piece of Egyptian or Greek heritage is stolen from a Paris museum, the country of origin will often ask, if you cannot protect our heritage, then you must return it. It's a politically charged question that challenges the very idea of a universal museum. Which brings us to our final question. When a masterpiece is stolen from its frame, who truly feels the loss? Is it the museum that loses an asset? The nation that loses a symbol? Or is it all of us, everyone who loses access to a unique voice from our past? It's a question worth thinking about.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like, and leave a comment to support the channel.